My coverage of COMPUTEX 2018 is sponsored by EVGA. EVGA offers a wide range of products including GPUs, cases, power supplies, motherboards, and more. To learn how to take your rig to the next level, head to evga.com. Alright, continuing our COMPUTEX coverage here with some private suite stuff here at the beautiful Taipei Grand Hyatt. Nope, we're not staying here. I kind of wish we were. Hey, anyone know where NVIDIA is? Can't seem to find NVIDIA. Anyone? Alright, no, we're not going to NVIDIA today. We all know they have nothing new to show. We're going to be going checking out some private suites here, something like Phanteks, Corsair, EVGA. Who else are we checking out? EK Waterblocks. We're going to see what kind of new stuff they have. Check it out. NVIDIA's at the Swallow Room, because everyone knows that GPP was hard to swallow. Okay, that was bad. So I've been sitting here for a significant amount of time trying to figure out if that security guard thing there was a mannequin or a real person. Brian tells me it's a mannequin because he's standing in a little case. I'm not convinced. I think he's watching us. All right, guys, we're over here at EVGA, and they're showing off a new BIOS here that's on one of their X299 dark boards, and it's got a built-in BIOS stress test. So instead of having to go into Windows and do your Prime 95, your OCCT, or whatever sort of stress test you want to use, you can do it right here inside the BIOS. So they currently have a 7980XE on demonstration using one of their AIO coolers, and as you can see right now, it's running a 7980X at 4 gigahertz at 1.1 volts. You can see we're getting 68C. But it also has another function built in where you can actually do an OC overclock, robo overclock basically. So it's going to go in there and start to incrementally increase the frequency and the voltage to kind of find where its sweet, happy spot is. One thing to keep in mind though is it definitely will get warm as you're doing it, so you're going to want to make sure you have adequate cooling. So here's an example of that right here. The OC robot is going right now. It's currently at 4.1, 1.23, and if you look at the temperatures, you'll see it's definitely starting to climb. That's very indicative, obviously, of the 7980XE, which is a very, very hot chip. So we just hit 80 and 81, and this just went practically to 90C. But this is kind of nice because it means you can sit here and dial in your overclocks. And I'm going to go ahead and stop it right there as it almost hits 100C. You can definitely dial in your overclocks here in the BIOS. And I asked them if this is indicative of a, similar experiences to what you'll get with Prime 95. I was curious about stability in the BIOS versus stability in the OS, and they're saying that they are showing very, very similar results. All right, so here's a new PSU from EVGA. This is what they're calling their Super 7. Basically, it's going to be available in a gold as well as a platinum rating. But it's sitting, this is a 1000 watt PSU, and it's sitting right next to one of their 1600 watt PSUs. You can see obviously the dual transformer in here. But they were telling me this transformer in here can actually scale up to 1600 watts. But what's important about this is if you look at the size of it, this is actually quite a bit smaller than even a standard 1000 watt you're typically used to seeing. In fact, here's a representation of what a standard 1000 watt power supply would look like currently from EVGA versus this guy here. So you can see that through the quality improvement of components and the transformer technology that they're implementing in here, they can get a much smaller footprint for a 1000 watt PSU. So this is good news for those building small form factor PCs, micro ATX PCs, where a larger 1000 watt would definitely have been maybe a concern in terms of fitment. But PSU technology is obviously shrinking and giving you the same efficiency and power rating that you're accustomed to seeing. And then if you're looking for the ultra small form factor, here is an Sfx Power Supply. You can see compared to the size of my hand, this is actually really small. This is a 650 watt standard Sfx size power supply from EVGA. So not even an Sfx L, which is typically what you would find in this type of power rating. So yeah, you can see obviously some exciting stuff coming from EVGA, which has definitely been making a splash in the industry over the last few years in terms of their power supply quality. So that's definitely one worth taking a look at once it's available. All right, one last thing we're going to look at here. This is a new motherboard from EVGA. This is the X299 Micro 2. We actually use, this is the same, well, the Micro was the board we used when we did the PDX LAN builds where Jerry and I did a build off and competed against each other. But what makes this one different is it's got active cooled VRM, a 14-phase VRM, and a slightly redesigned wireless module to make it a bit smaller. But that makes this much more friendly for overclocking in a micro ATX format with the actively cooled 14-phase VRM. And other than that, it's pretty much the same, but a very basic, very sleek design. EVGA is kind of known with their motherboards. Like this is the dark X299 right here. They're kind of known with their boards to not go over the top in terms of flashiness and just give you features, which is, in terms of stability and build quality, which is what you really come to expect out of EVGA motherboards. All right, guys, we made our way over to EK Waterblocks, and we're showing quite a few new products. In fact, everything in here is pretty much new. So this is the new Wave Monoblock, just kind of an example of Obviously we got some RGB implementation in there, but they've changed the way that the fluid is actually going to flow through the block. New CPU block right here, which is obviously much larger, more surface area. This is on a Ryzen system right here, but you can see compared to the original block designs, much larger. This is an example of one of their new AIOs, which is basically a full custom loop, the DDC style pump, radiator, everything pre-assembled. Here is one of the new velocity blocks, which we're going to be showing you right here. As you can see, there's definitely an RGB theme, but trust me guys, this gets good, and you'll see it in a second. So these are the new Threadripper blocks right here. I'm going to do my best I can to show you, considering the light is currently glowing. The fluid goes down through the intake of the block, but then it separates and goes 2 different directions and then meets back at the top. And the reason why they did that is they found that they're, with the die size of the TR4 and Threadripper, that they needed to split the flow rather than going across the die. That way you can heat both of the elements inside of the core equally. So they were able to get better thermal, obviously dissipation at that with that type of design. Here is what the Intel and more mainstream block looks like. But this is the new Velocity series. So if you've ever held a EK water block in the past or built with it, you remember they had those flow plates that were built in. This is obviously all completely redesigned. Here's an example of one of the new flow plates right here, the heat plates that are built into the new Velocity block. So definitely a whole new kind of a revamped design from the ground up. One of the things that was really popular last year that we took a look at was their fluid gaming series. Remember the 240, 240G aluminum water cooling kits where every part was aluminum, including the GPU block, CPU block, fittings, radiator to combat galvanic corrosion, but also give you a very cost-effective entry point into water cooling if you've never experienced it and you want more than an AIO. But what they're showing here are a lot of the expansion pieces that we're told were going to be coming. So you could expand your loop, add more GPUs. Here's your fittings. Obviously, you have several different block designs, as you can see right here. But what they're also showing is some new covers. These milled and anodized covers showing you just how good this can look, but at a price point that more people can actually afford. So just an example of some of the custom designs they put on their fluid gaming. So we got sort of a plexi clear. Obviously, we've got a design on one of the acetals. And then over here, this is an example of one of their fluid gaming pre-built gaming system. Okay, so maybe RGB is not your thing. Well, EK Special Projects would probably be for you. This is just an example of what happens when the owner of the company, Eddie himself, is also very passionate about woodworking. These are custom covers that have been made for water blocks, GPU blocks. And as you can see, this is very classy. They have 3 different types of wood here. Dark walnut, Sylvanian walnut, and padok. I'm not entirely sure how to pronounce it. But as you can see, the grain is very classy looking. And why am I even showing this? Because this is all custom made to order. You have to order the pieces and then they will make it. So if you are, working for a company that sells water cooling parts, you would have to buy all of these pieces custom made, which is not cheap. But where would I use something like this? Well, you guys know I'm doing the Post Malone build, and you guys have been wondering where that's at. I have the chassis now in the States. It is in my possession when I get back. And we did the custom wood guitar head like I wanted to do in that that video where we talked about options with that case. But my concern was the only wood in that case is going to be that guitar head on the back of the case. Well, now you guys can see the gears in my head are turning. We just found a way to incorporate more wood into this build, bringing it to a whole new level in terms of classy. So yeah, if you guys like the very sleek and very high-end premium look of a wood element, well, you're going to definitely see a lot more of it now in that build. So here's an Inwin S chassis they have on display here, obviously utilizing all of the RGB fans, RGB blocks, RGB reservoir, RGB, RAM, you name it, RGB is present. All right, so here it is, guys. You've probably heard by now quite a few times about the new Phanteks Evolve X. So this is basically a successor to the very popular but a little bit controversial airflow version of the Evolve last year. So I did a build in it, and as you guys saw, it did suffer some temperature issues in terms of water cooling, but this is addressing all of those issues. So let's go ahead and start with the front panel. I don't know how well it picks up on camera, but you can see it's much bigger. I can actually get my hand in here into the side. It's got a bigger gap right here. It sits away from the fan filter a little bit to allow a little bit more airflow. But on the top, you can see they've also expanded the grill across the entire, most of the top of the panel, whereas before it had the small slits. Now it has a much larger opening as well as the grill is not quite as fine. If you look on the side too, you can see we've got some redesigned hardware cages and a vertical GPU mount. So they've definitely done a lot in terms of not just fixing the airflow, but also adding some additional features as well. This case also natively supports 9 SSDs and 10 hard drives all at the same time. And then they've got these doors that sort of fold away so that cable management's kind of an afterthought. You don't have to worry about cable management when it comes to these, especially when you have this much storage. Cable management definitely becomes something to be concerned about. So the front panel RGB is actually contact based. So when you take off the front panel, the lights shut off as well. And then you can access your fan filter, obviously your front fans, and you can see the RGB right here on that front aluminum piece. Phanteks has also been working on expanding their water cooling line. So this is an example of a water cooling loop. It's pretty much all Phanteks products. So GPU block, CPU block, and this really nice, different, not a circular reservoir, but it is a DDC pump and a reservoir integrated into one. But as you can see, this is a rectangular design. So this is actually mounted to the front fans. You can see we've got some sort of a pearlescent fluid going around in there. But this is also featuring the Phanteks fittings. So Phanteks is also definitely making an impact in the water cooling scene. So here's a prototype they're showing off. This is the Phanteks P600S. It's a very raw format right now. But what's interesting about this one here is it's got a focus on silence. So you can see we've got some foam material here on the front panel to kind of cut down on some of the sound and reverb. And what's different about this one though is it is using a fabric-based fan filter. So very different from the typical metal mesh that you're used to seeing. The side here is a tempered glass side panel, but what I also want you to notice is how there are these rubber seals on here. So when you close the door, this seals off not only airflow, but also any kind of sound leak that could come through the glass. One of the nice things about tempered glass is that it's shiny and it's very, very clear. The sad part is you can't seal it off very well with the chassis, but as you can see, it's on a hinge, as well as the back side is also on a hinge. So you can see a lot of cable management built in, typical SSD trays on the back, a segmented bottom section for your power supply, and then on the top, also a removable panel for top case airflow if you want it. Otherwise, it's closed off, presumably with the same sort of a foam sound isolator. That way you can go with a silent build if that's your choice. Now you can't come to COMPUTEX and not talk about Corsair. So this is a new chassis they're showing. It's an MATX chassis. This is the 280X, which is a part of the Crystal series. So you got 3 tempered glass panels on the top, the front, and the side. And it comes in a couple of different variants. So you have the RGB variant, which will include 2 of the light loop fans on the front. Obviously they've got this one expanded with the RGB strips on the side. Of course, we've got some of their RGB memory in there. They're showing off an SLI config right there with 2 Founders Edition cards. Of course, their Vengeance RGB memory and one of their AIOs. But this is a very sleek design. It definitely carries over from their Air series, the dual chamber. So the power supply is actually over here on this side. This is actually ventilation. And then it's you got your power buttons over here on the right. And then you can see that it pulls in air through these gaps on the side of the glass and gaps right here. Same thing with ventilation on the top. You have a gap right here on the side, gap on this side, and then as well as the back and the front for it to exhaust air if you have top fans. And then on the back you can see you have your typical exhaust. So this is actually the 280X from Corsair. Tell me what you guys think. MATX and small form factor are definitely making a comeback, and this is what Corsair thinks that should look like. Other than that, there's as much RGB as you could want. We got RGB here, more RGB here, big wall of RGB, more RGB there, more RGB there, more RGB there. Oh look, more RGB right there. Here we have an RGB control panel known as IQ, so more RGB there. When it comes to the RAM, yep, you guessed it, a whole lot more RGB. And even looking at the peripherals, as you can see, more RGB. So that was just sort of a quick look here at the RGB booth, the Corsair booth at COMPUTEX 2018. Anyway guys, that's a wrap for us here with our first person perspective walkthrough of COMPUTEX, obviously doing the private suites here at the Grand Hyatt. Anyway guys, thanks for watching, and a huge thank you to our sponsor EVGA for making this trip possible. We're gonna get out of here. We will see you guys back in the States, and as always, thanks for watching.